A warm breeze blew gently on a peaceful summer day. The sound of a keyboard clacking echoed in the air. A boy named Kotaru sat in front of his computer, letting out a sigh of relief after finishing his homework. Relaxing in his chair, he picked up a book to read. But before he could relax for long, his phone rang, muttering under his breath. He walked over to where the sound was coming from, looking for his phone while snacking. When he found the phone on the floor, he answered. The call was about how smoothly the unloading was going. But Kotaru was surprised by the caller's strange reaction. Kotaro quickly went to Mount Takao, where he met a couple. The man gave Kotaro his ticket, then turned to hug his wife. Kotaro wasn't too happy seeing the couple's public display of affection and complained that they could have gone without him. The man replied, asking if he really wouldn't care if they got lost on the trail. Kotaro argued that it was nearly impossible to get lost when taking the cable car, but the man was still worried about unexpected incidents. Without arguing further, Kotaro reluctantly went with the couple, silently following behind them and buying a box of snacks. When they offered him some food along the way, he just quietly accepted it. Kotaro explained that trail number 1 was very well paved, with shops and restrooms along the way. He told the couple about interesting sights like the monkey park and the lucky octopus, while pointing out that even cars could use this path. The couple followed behind, taking pictures, while Kotaro explained that after passing the temple, they just needed to follow the trail to the summit. Kotaro remarked that this place was more for sightseeing than for mountain climbing. He was about to say something else when the woman interrupted him, asking if he had researched a lot about this place, since he seemed to know everything so well. Kotaro replied that he didn't actually know that much, while the man told his wife that Kotaro had lived here his whole life. The locals in Hachioji often visit this mountain, even for school field trips. The woman, satisfied with the explanation, asked Kotaro why he didn't seem happy to be back, even though he had just recently moved back. Kotaro admitted that he didn't have any good memories associated with this place. Just then, a strong gust of wind hit, nearly knocking all 3 of them over. The man quickly checked to see if his wife was okay, but Kotaro just stood there, his eyes glazed over, muttering that this was the place where the Tengu had kidnapped him. When they arrived at the shrine, the couple asked Kotaro for more details about his kidnapping. Kotaro told them the incident was a mystery, but that he didn't remember anything about it, only what he'd heard from relatives. The man asked if he might have lost his memories from the shock. Kotaro replied that it seemed his body still remembered, as if it was trying to prevent him from ever returning to this place. Sitting alone on a stone bench, Kotaro's mind was filled with thoughts about how bizarre the incident was. Back in elementary school, he had no memory of being lost in the mountains. But it felt as if someone had intentionally hidden those memories from him. He realized he had been to this place before, and he remembered the feeling of being so scared that he burst into tears. Kotaro was curious about how he was rescued, but he told himself that maybe not remembering was for the best, because it must have been a traumatic experience. Suddenly, the couple came back, but Kotaro felt that something was off. As a faint memory of a girl surfaced in his mind, the couple continued talking about Tengu and their similarity to yokai. The man mentioned that the god enshrined here was also a Tengu, assuming Kotaro must have already known. They chatted about the 2 statues, one of a long-nosed man and another with a bird's beak, and then marveled at the beautiful leaves of the season. Meanwhile, Kotaro recalled someone once mentioning the names of the trees and plants, and a thought flashed through his mind. He had met someone here before. Instinctively, Kotaro began to run forward, stopping on the edge of a small cliff and realized the path ahead was familiar. As he followed the path, a branch scraped against his cheek, making it sting, and the memory suddenly came flooding back. He remembered being in this exact spot with someone else. He took another step and got caught on a branch, nearly falling over. Turning his head, Kotaro came face to face with a giant wolf and a girl wearing a bird mask. Kotaro was stunned, staring at the girl as she warned him not to return here, that there cannot be a third time. Before he could even understand what was happening, Kotaro found himself sitting on the steps of the shrine. The man asked if he was okay, but Kotaro just shook his head, his mind hazy with the image of a girl. Back home, he cooked dinner, his gaze occasionally drifting to the compass in his hand. Late at night, unable to stop himself, he decided to return to the mountain. Surprised by the thick darkness that had fallen, it reminded him of the terror a child feels when lost in the woods. Kotaro took a deep breath and pressed on. Kotaro was surprised that this time, no one tried to stop him. A deep feeling rose within him that he had forgotten something very important, and that he needed to meet someone here. Suddenly, his foot slipped, and he fell into a ditch. The fall triggered another memory. Kotaro remembered crying from an injury, sitting next to a giant dog. A little girl approached, asking if he had been crying long, and then offered to look at the wound on his hand. Though nervous, she quickly healed his injury, and Kotaro finally stopped crying. She knelt in front of him, suggesting they go get some medicine. That was the first time he saw her beautiful face. Back in the present, Kotaro woke up to find the girl from his childhood memory sitting in front of him. She asked worriedly about his injuries, but Kotaro just stared silently at her and the small wings on her back. He was quiet for a few moments, completely stunned. The girl waved a hand in front of Kotaro's face, asking if he'd hit his head. Before she could finish, Kotaro cut her off, asking bluntly if she was the one who had saved him in the past. Without waiting for an answer, he recounted getting lost from his school group and falling beside the giant dog. The girl seemed surprised that he still remembered her. Kotaro quickly grabbed her hand, repeating everything that had happened that day. Confused, she asked if he remembered their promise. Seeing his blank expression, she realized he remembered nothing and started to scold him, blaming him for coming back even though she'd warned him. Her words echoed in his head. She had told him not to return a third time. Her agitation grew as she asked if he knew the village rule. Kotaro just looked at her, confused and not understanding. The girl tried to explain, her voice faltering as she mentioned the significance of the two of them meeting 3 times under the sacred tree. Her face flushed red as she suddenly embraced Kotaro, revealing that those who meet under the sacred tree must marry in a sacred house. Soon after, a lively party began, with many people in bird masks celebrating and enjoying delicious food, soaking in the festive atmosphere. Kotaro sat with a pensive look on his face, quietly amidst the cheerful chaos, as everyone else was busy eating and drinking and discussing Haim's upcoming wedding. A man in a mask poured him a drink, startling Kotaro, who apologized for spacing out. However, instead of accepting the apology, the man scolded him for apologizing when he was the groom. Confused, Kotaro tried to piece together the events to understand how he had ended up in the situation. Another person complimented his looks, while someone else commented on their surprise that Hime had chosen to marry a human, even guessing they might have a tall son. Kotaro struggled to remember what had happened after he slipped from the cliff. Just then, Haim burst in, scolding everyone for throwing a party without her permission. When someone complained about her being late, Jaime changed the subject, berating another person for suggesting she wear a Tengu mask even though she was marrying Kotaro. She angrily insisted that the mask was outdated. Watching this, Kotaro suddenly realized they were using the exact same banner from her birthday party. A man in a mask explained that a party was customary after such news. However, Haim angrily declared that the party was cancelled. The guests began to complain, criticizing Hime for hastily bringing a man here and insisting they just wanted to get everything ready quickly. Although Kotaro tried to interject, he was ignored. Haim explained that Kotaro had only just recovered his memory of their first meeting and wasn't ready for a wedding yet. An older man countered, pointing out that they had met 3 times under the sacred tree and revealed that Haim had once expressed her wish to marry this human. Haim blushed at this revelation, but finally reluctantly admitted the truth. The whole crowd immediately turned their attention to Kotaro, bombarding him with questions about his past and his career. Haim tried to intervene, but her efforts were ignored. Finally, Kotaru spoke up, sharing that he was from Hachioji, worked as a systems engineer, was currently single, and had no intention of getting married. He thanked Haim for saving him, and clarified that he wasn't bound by the village's rules and would apologize if he had unintentionally broken any of them. Before he could finish, an old woman cut in, insisting that Kotaru couldn't do that. Haim tried to calm her down, but the old woman warned Kotaru about the consequences of not following their traditions, especially since Haim needed an heir. In a protective gesture, Haim stepped in front of Kotaru, shielding him, and insisting that he was just having trouble remembering things. The old woman looked at her, confused, prompting Haim to reassure her that she would help Kotaru get his memories back and would respect the village's rules. Haim asked for a moment alone with Kotaru. Once they found a quiet moment, away from prying eyes, Kotaru expressed that he didn't understand the village's customs. Haim cut him off, handing back his cell phone, and suggesting they could escape by air. While everyone was busy drinking, she also figured they needed to find Kotaru some shoes. Still confused, Kotaru asked her why she wanted to marry him. Stressing that he had no interest in getting married, Haim gently reminded him that he still didn't have all his memories, and she fondly recalled the moment he used to call her name, chasing after her relentlessly. Kotaru admitted that he did remember that moment, and Haim's smile grew even brighter as she said he must have a family to protect. A quiet moment passed, and Haim apologized for dragging him into this mess. Just then, she found Kotaru's shoes and realized he didn't have his wallet with him. Kotaru checked his pockets, only to discover his compass was gone. Haim guessed that someone might have picked up Kotaru's compass. Their conversation was interrupted as a group of children ran by. Commenting on the appearance of a human with a spark of excitement in her eyes, she asked Kotaru if he had a small, enchanted compass. Kotaru reached out and touched Haim's wings. Surprised to find they were real and moved beneath his fingers, Haim blushed at his touch and suddenly asked, "Aren't you scared to touch a tengu's wings?" Kotaru confessed that he was, but their conversation was cut short when they heard someone approaching. Haim hurriedly led Kotaru into a nearby room. While they were hiding, they heard the tengu criticizing Hime for revealing her face to a human. They expressed concern that she should be focusing on her duties as a leader, instead of bringing an outsider into the village. When the hallway fell quiet, Haim whispered that those tengu would have to answer for their disrespectful words. Kotaru was surprised to learn that she was the leader, thinking her grandmother was the one in charge. Haim explained that her family, including her parents and grandparents, were the previous leaders but had passed away. Although the villagers had raised her, she felt frustrated with their traditional customs. Suddenly, Haim eagerly asked Kotaru his opinion on whether a shorter hakama would look cuter. Without waiting for his answer, she went on about how the masks were an outdated custom and ruined her hair. Kotaru hesitantly agreed that it was easier to communicate without a mask, which made Haim happy. She changed the subject, asking about the device she had returned to him earlier, which he called a smartphone. When she realized it was a smartphone, her pride shone through as she said she was also familiar with tablets and computers. Kotaru listened with amusement as she explained that mountaineers often lose their devices, and that she collects them from the cliffs. Haim's fascination with the outside world grew as she described people enjoying life, eating, taking pictures, and being with their loved ones. Kotaru recalled what the other tengu had said about her. Haim continued to lament how she couldn't use the devices because they were all password locked, and there was no electricity there. As the leader of the village, she was required to get married and bear children, but her longing to experience the outside world left her feeling frustrated. She stood up, apologizing for her complaints, and promised to get Kotaru's compass from Ichon. Kotaru tried to stop her, but Haim rushed off alone. He remained seated, pondering the sounds from outside, wondering if Haim was actually going to get married or if she was planning to run away. He overheard a conversation about the strict rules governing her marriage and the expectation for her to bear children for the sake of the village. In a serene area, Haim told Kotaro to take a deep breath if he felt scared, assuring him that he wouldn't fall, but also warning him not to look down if he's afraid of heights. Kotaro asked why no one was following them, and Haim explained that everyone was still celebrating. She held out the compass to him, but instead of giving it to him, she clutched it tightly in her hand, revealing it was a protective charm she had made because he treasured it. Haim wished Kotaro well and reminded him to take care of himself before turning to leave. Kotaro hesitated, worried she might be punished for breaking the rules. Haim reassured him, saying she'd never faced serious consequences before, even though her grandmother had warned her of the dangers of defying tradition. She smiled, insisting it was her problem and that Kotaro shouldn't worry about it. Kotaro grew thoughtful, declaring that the rules of this place weren't what mattered to him. He suggested that Haim had the right to defy them, stressing that she deserved to live life on her own terms. Hime was taken aback, thinking that if she refused the marriage, her family line might come to an end. Kotaro stood his ground, saying she had the right to put her own happiness first, explaining that while he respected her family, she should still run away to experience life for herself. Haim slowly began to warm up to the idea, asking if she could wear Western clothes or go shopping in modern stores. When Kotaro confirmed that she could, her excitement grew, and she asked again about exploring cities and riding on trains. She blushed at the thought of wearing sneakers, trying new foods, and walking along the beach. Haim's excitement radiated as she took Kotaro's hand, declaring that they would experience all of these things together. This sudden declaration left Kotaro stunned. You protest that you never invited her to live with you. However, ignoring your protests, Haim lifts you up by the collar, insisting that they have to tell everyone about her decision. Flying through the air, Haim carries Kotaro back to the banquet hall, declaring that she will live with Kotaro as his wife. The crowd erupts in applause, but Kotaro is still trying to process the situation, while an excited Haim continues on about their future. Feeling overwhelmed, Kotaro tries again to make his intentions clear, repeating that she should follow her heart, not the rules. Haim just giggles, asserting that getting engaged to you is her way of following those rules. Since they'll be living together, Kotaro tries to argue against Haim's logic, but is cut off by her cheerful shout as they arrive at your house. Haim drops Kotaro to the ground and flashes a bright smile. Delighted that this will be their new home, recalling her earlier words, Kotaro asks about a promise he might have made to her, but Haim refuses to reveal the details, only suggesting that he should ask again once he remembers everything. She hugs him tightly, expressing her excitement about the happy life they'll have together. From that moment on, Kotaro sleeps peacefully on his sofa, the gentle sounds of the morning broken only by the ringing of his alarm. As he slowly wakes up, noticing a reminder to take out the trash, Kotaro turns around and is startled to see Haim slumped over the table, sleeping with her head on her arms. In her dream, she mumbles about wanting more red bean rice. Suddenly, Kotaro realizes he had completely forgotten Haim was even there. Seeing her sound asleep, he quietly approaches her, his hand gently reaching out to touch the feathers on her wings. The soft sensation brings a fleeting childhood memory to mind. But before he can ponder it any further, Haim wakes with a start, scolding Kotaro for touching her wings while she slept. Kotaro recoils, apologizing hastily. Haim, completely unfazed by his embarrassment, suggesting they start from the beginning, she bowed politely and insisted that Kotaro take care of her, as she was completely unfamiliar with this new life. She handed him a small box and expressed her wish to meet his family. Frustration welled up in Kotaro, and he snapped, reminding her that he never invited her to stay at his place. Haim was undeterred, pointing out that it was Kotaro himself who suggested she leave the village. Kotaro protested, clarifying that he only wanted her to be able to experience the outside world. When Haim naively said she didn't know anyone else, Kotaro asked about other Tengu communities. She explained that the other Tengu live on mountains, which would feel just like living in her village. Despite agreeing with Haim's logic, Kotaru still insisted that she should reconsider and return to her village. Haim ignored his protests and started unpacking. When Kotaru objected, she explained that the villagers already believed she was going to marry him, so going back was impossible. Reluctantly, Kotaru agreed to let her stay for a few days. But Haim wouldn't accept this temporary arrangement. She talked casually about her belongings and asked where she should put them. Then she took out a jar. Calling something out from it, Kotaru was stunned when a fox suddenly emerged from the small jar. He stared in astonishment, listening as Haim cheerfully explained that she had many things stored in the jar. She even offered him some candy from her village, but Kotaru, still in shock, asked how she could do that. Wondering if she had some kind of power as a tengu, Haim blushed slightly, saying he could call it a magical power, but she insisted she wasn't very talented, as she was a karasu tengu. Suddenly, Kotaru grabbed her hand. Amazed by her ability, noticing a light that seemed to glow from Haim's palm, he praised her power, but Haim pulled her hand away, teasing him about whether he liked touching people. Kotaru quickly apologized, but she reassured him that it was just her hand. Turning away, she asked if he found her body attractive. Kotaru asked her not to talk like that, but Haim ignored his discomfort, getting up to get her cleaning tools. Kotaru was once again surprised by her magic as she presented the clean supplies, proudly declaring herself a good wife. She showed off her duster, making Kotaru uncomfortable, and advised her to just relax. However, Haim got annoyed, arguing that she couldn't be a good wife if she was lazy, despite Kotaru's skepticism about her knowledge of cleaning. Since she came from a lineage of leaders, Kotaru suggested she didn't know how to clean, which offended Haim. She reminisced about running around with a mop when she was little, and how you can't clean tatami rooms in a circular motion. Kotaru ignores her argument and hands her the vacuum cleaner, explaining how it works, and encouraging her to try it. Haim was surprised to see it was electric, and when she pressed the button, the machine started moving, causing her to cheer with delight. Kotaru smiled slightly at her excitement. Just as he was about to leave, he heard Haim decide she would clean the next room. So he hurried back, telling her she didn't need to clean that room. But she had already opened the door, and her eyes widened in amazement at the mountain of books filling the room. When she asked if all those books were his, he replied that they belonged to his late grandfather. Haim stepped inside, fascinated by the collection, and eagerly picked out a book about yukai. She smiled, remarking that Kotaru must really like yukai, since all the books were about them. He tried to deny it, but Haim teased him about his interest, making her wonder if that was why he found her body so interesting. Kotaru sighed, repeating that the books belonged to his grandfather. Haim still looked smug, expressing her desire to show her abilities to Kotaru's grandfather, believing he would be very impressed. However, when she turned around, she noticed Kotaru had left the room. Looking out the door, she called his name, but he just replied that he was going to do the laundry, while also reminding her that the library was dirty and that she should take her socks off before going in. Haim was surprised, then realized that he had just moved into this house. She apologized for assuming he had always lived here. Kotaru hesitated for a moment, finally telling her that he grew up in an orphanage. Haim's face fell as she took in this information and shared that she too had lost her family, but was always supported by the village community. Kotaru explained that he has no one to take care of him, and he was reminded of a child who couldn't live alone. He didn't think much of it until he saw the sad expression on Haim's face. She asked if he felt lonely, and he replied that he'd never thought of it that way. Not liking her look of pity, he was about to change the subject when Haim suddenly pointed out that her socks were dirty. She stood up, determined to do the laundry for him. And Kotaru tried to talk her out of it, but she insisted she could handle it herself. Just as he was about to object again, Haim declared that from now on, she would take care of the laundry and cleaning, also promising to wake him up every morning and prepare his food. Kotaru was stunned, unable to believe Haim had taken control of the situation. He tried to stop her, but she paid him no mind, hurrying into his room to get the laundry. He felt relieved to have avoided her, washing his underwear by hand, then headed to the laundry room and asked Haim if she even knew how to use a washing machine. When he opened the laundry room door, he was surprised to see Hime changing, and he quickly shut the door, asking her what was wrong. Jaime calmly explained that she was just changing because she'd worn those clothes yesterday, and she wanted to wash her undergarments. Kotaro yelled, telling Jaime to give him a heads up next time, realizing that he was the one who had opened the door without thinking. Haim, wearing a robe, peeked her head out to ask about his laundry. Kotaro hurriedly shut the door again, telling her not to come out in her kimono undergarments. Haim was confused, thinking she was fully dressed. Meanwhile, Kotaro was still puzzled, not understanding why she had reacted so strongly when he touched her wings. Later, while sitting in the living room, Kotaro told himself that he really needed to find a way to get Jaime back to the mountain. During their meal, a stomach growl echoed from Haim, breaking the silence. Annoyed, Kotaro asked why she was still hungry when she was already on her 5th manju. Haim shot back that it wasn't her fault she was still hungry. Kotaro stood up, pointing out that she couldn't get full-on just manju. However, when he opened the fridge, he sighed, seeing there was nothing left to eat, and decided to go to the convenience store. Just then, Haim saw a package of noodles and expressed her desire to eat it. Kotaro warned Jaime that the noodles wouldn't be as good as they looked on the package, then asked if she liked ramen. Haim immediately lit up, sharing that she had seen people eating noodles on the mountain and knew that it could be made with just hot water. She had always wanted to try it and asked if she could make it herself. Kotaro nodded and started preparing the instant noodles, telling her not to get too excited. However, Haim watched him with a look of admiration as he boiled the water, and sensing her excitement, he invited her to join him in the kitchen. Flustered but enthusiastic, Haim chose the same noodle flavor as Kotaro, and they went to the kitchen together. Kotaro showed her how to open the lid halfway. Haim stared in amazement at the dried ingredients inside, her face flushing with excitement. Kotaro chuckled and showed her how to pour water into the cup up to the fill line. When Haim had trouble finding the line, Kotaro pointed it out to her, and she started pouring in the water. The ingredients in the cup began to float up. And Haim, worried she might spill, was reassured by Kotaro that everything was fine. She gazed at the noodle cup full of water with a look of pure amazement, then followed Kotaro's instructions and closed the lid. They placed the cups in the microwave, and Haim excitedly counted down every second. When the microwave beeped, she jumped up, thrilled to see the noodles were ready. After confirming with Kotaro that it was time to eat, they both sat down and said thanks for the meal together. Haim dove into her meal, her eyes lighting up as she enjoyed the noodles. She exclaimed how delicious it was, surprised by the unique flavor, so different from soy sauce. She remarked that the noodles had a strange shape and were very soft, and that the meat was soft too. Kotaro explained that they were actually Chinese-style noodles, which only added to Haim's excitement. She couldn't believe that such a delicious meal could be made just by adding hot water. As she focused on her meal, Kotaro watched her with a gentle smile. Suddenly, he laughed when she asked why. Kotaro teased her, saying that if she was still hungry, she could make another one. He joked that she really loved to eat, but Haim tried to deny it, even though she had already finished 3 more bowls. Afterward, she thanked him, clapping happily, while Kotaro secretly thought about her immense love for food. Haim closed her eyes in bliss, chuckling as she shared that she never imagined she'd get to eat noodles after leaving her mountain home. She recalled the special flavor of the soba she used to eat, and expressed her gratitude for living in his house, sincerely thanking him for the experience. Kotaro was taken aback by her sincere words, his face flushing red, only managing to say that it was just a cup of noodles. Haim insisted that if they hadn't met, she would never have had the chance to enjoy such delicious food. She excitedly spoke of telling everyone about this amazing flavor, and imagined their reactions when she shared her new discovery with the villagers. Kotaro shyly said that he could make her many other dishes, which made Hime smile radiantly. She happily grabbed another cup of noodles, while Kotaro thought to himself that maybe he'd let her stay a while longer. Haim enthusiastically planned to wash the cups intending to keep them in her collection. When she finished eating, she quickly cleaned everything up, surprising Kotaro with her determination. Kotaro prepared a metamayaki for Jaime, letting her help a little with the small steps. She was excited and joyful as they arranged the ingredients on the bread. When it was done, Kotaro praised her for doing so well, even though it was her first time. Jaime looked at the metamayaki, marveling at its beautiful appearance, even though the name of the dish sounded a bit scary. After checking if the coffee was ready, they sat down to eat, and as expected, Jaime couldn't help but exclaim that everything was so delicious. Kotaro quietly enjoyed his meal, feeling relieved that there was still enough bread at home. While enjoying the food, Hime expressed her disbelief at having such a delicious breakfast and was excited about future meals. Kotaro hesitated for a moment, and Hime, sensing his unease, worriedly asked if they were going to have lunch. He assured her he would cook whatever she wanted, which made her light up with joy. He said he planned to buy meat today, which made Jaime even more excited. Suddenly, Jaime remembered she needed to air out the damp blankets and clean the house. Kotaro pointed out that she should get her own room ready and told her to bring her bag. However, Jaime was not happy with the suggestion, almost shouting that they had agreed to sleep in the same room. Kotaro retorted, reminding her of their conversation from yesterday. Unfazed, Jaime smiled brightly, declaring that she had already prepared the blankets, and asked him which side he preferred, since she wasn't picky. Ignoring her, Kotaro started to pack up the futons, making Hime protest that she had just finished setting them up. He firmly said that they would not be sleeping in the same room, claiming the futon wasn't comfortable, then turned and walked away. Jaime grabbed Kotaro's shirt with surprising strength, her resolve unshaken, insisting that they had to sleep together on one futon. Frustrated, Kotaro threw the futons onto the floor, declaring that this would be her temporary room. Jaime frowned at the distance, showing her displeasure. Kotaro struggled with his inner thoughts, wanted her to go back to the mountain, but kept silent. Jaime quickly shifted her attention to the food, asking if she could try it with the white sauce. Kotaro agreed, and as she took a big bite, she remarked that it tasted sour compared to the red sauce. Kotaro couldn't help but think about her mouth, how wide it was. Jaime, grateful for the meal, offered him a piece in return, but Kotaro hesitated, not wanting to eat from a piece that was already half-eaten. However, Jaime insisted that it was delicious, leading to a playful argument between them. Just then, a voice from the door stopped them. Curious, Kotaro went to the door and saw a delivery man standing there. The man handed him a registered letter and asked if he had just moved in. When Kotaro confirmed he'd just arrived this month, the delivery man mentioned that someone had said as much. Kotaro's confusion deepened as the mailman explained that the house had been empty for a while and he thought he might have the wrong address. The man mentioned the Tsukisaka family who used to live there and was glad to see Kotaro back. Surprised, Kotaro thanked the mailman and saw him off, still in shock that someone remembered his family after 20 years. When he went back inside, Jaime looked at him eagerly and asked if he had gotten a letter. Kotaro was suddenly struck by how distinctly different she was, with her silver hair, golden eyes, and small wings. A wave of panic washed over him as he rushed to close the door, scolding himself for forgetting how others would react to seeing her. He worried about the kind of uproar it could cause on social media, fearing for Jaime's safety if she were discovered. His thoughts spiraled, imagining the consequences for her and the other Tengu, possibly leading to human experimentation. Jaime noticed his pale face and suggested he was hiding something. Kotaro denied it, gently patting her head to distract her. When she asked why he did that, he told her it was to remind her to be more mindful of her appearance. He was determined to keep her hidden from the outside world, trying to redirect the conversation. Kotaro asked Jaime to get her room ready, but Jaime protested. Kotaro muttered that this would keep her safe from prying eyes. Their conversation was interrupted when an old woman appeared at the door, staring at them. Kotaro rushed out to greet her, his heart pounding. The old woman seemed very happy to see him again and tried to remember her son's name, but Kotaro explained that he was her grandson. The old woman apologized for her poor eyesight saying that even her own grandchildren often teased her about it. Kotaro was relieved that she probably hadn't recognized Haim. The conversation continued as the old woman reminisced about Kotaru's childhood, tells her about the memories he has of eating watermelon with his grandmother. The old woman's stories warmed Kotaru's heart, and he smiled as she recalled how he used to eat up all the ohagi she made. She also recounted how he used to bring her food. The memories filled him with nostalgia. The old woman praised him, saying how much he had grown and matured. After their brief but heartwarming reunion, Kotaro went back inside, slipping the compass into his pocket. He found Jaime sitting quietly in her room, whispering that she likes ohagi too. Kotaro agreed, saying they really are delicious. Jaime offered to make some ohagi, but immediately realized her comment might have been inappropriate. Kotaro gently patted her on the head, reassuring her. Kotaro then left to get a heater for her, while Jaime returned to her book. Before long, a few neighbors dropped by, bringing vegetables and other supplies. Kotaro felt a mix of annoyance and anxiety. He was worried that if this kept up, Jaime's presence might be discovered. Suddenly, Jaime's stomach let out a loud rumble, making Kotaro burst out laughing. He suggested they get something to eat and got ready to order some food. However, to his disappointment, all the delivery services were closed. Just as he was about to head out to the convenience store, Jaime pulled out some paper menus she had found, asking if they could use them. A wave of nostalgia washed over Kotaro as he took the menus from her, remembering how he used to use them. Jaime eagerly requested curry udon. Though he was surprised she had tried it before, Kotaro agreed to order it anyway. When the delivery person arrived, he asked Kotaro if he was the one who used to live here. Kotaro confirmed that he was, and the delivery guy shared that his own father used to make lots of deliveries to this house, mentioning a little boy who really loved mochi. Kotaro was still stunned, trying to process the connection between himself and the delivery person. Heading back inside, he lifted the lids off the steaming bowls of food, and Jaime was instantly captivated by the aroma. Kotaro commented that the broth smelled delicious, and when she asked what he had ordered, he replied that he wasn't picky about anything. Jaime gazed at the dishes on the table. Kotaro thought about the delivery person's words, and suddenly, he remembered the taste of his childhood meals. With a fleeting sense of nostalgia, he took a bite, and the flavor immediately came rushing back, making Jaime smile as she watched him enjoy the meal. When the meal was over, Kotaro commented that he was stuffed, while Jaime calmly said she was still hungry. Her bright smile lit up the room as she asked what they should eat next, enthusiastically suggesting they could order more food. Jaime declared that from now on, they would eat a lot together. When Kotaro wondered if food was the only thing on her mind, she explained that it was just because she saw so many delicious things, that she wanted to try them all. And so, she began to daydream about all the dishes they could enjoy. Kotaro tried to gather his thoughts, preparing to say something important. The next morning, when Kotaro opened his eyes, he was surprised to see Hime beaming at him. Startled, he shot up from the sofa, and Jaime complained that he should use the futon instead of sleeping there every night. Ignoring her complaint, Kotaro asked what she was wearing on her head. Jaime cheerfully pointed to the dining table, proudly announcing that she had prepared breakfast for him. Kotaro's eyes widened when he saw the food laid out, and he asked if she had made rice balls. Jaime quickly corrected him, saying that it was obviously fried rice, adding with a bright smile that she was very good at making it. Kotaro picked up a clump of rice, noticing it wasn't just plain rice, and Jaime explained that she had added various ingredients, listing components like egg and meat, along with various seasonings. She excitedly told him to try the first one. Kotaro was surprised she knew how to use the rice cooker. When he expressed his surprise, Jaime replied that she'd used some of his pots, though they were different from what she was used to back home. Hurriedly, Kotaro ran to the kitchen, only to find it in a complete mess. Jaime quickly defended herself, insisting that she was trying to make miso soup but couldn't find the ingredients. When Kotaro pointed to a dirty pot and asked about it, Jaime insisted that she was just trying to make that soup. He then asked her what she was going to do about this mess, but before she could answer, he told her she didn't have to cook. Haim innocently replied that she hadn't done anything to be a good wife while living in his house, so learning to cook was the least she could do. Kotaro reassured her that there's no rule saying a good wife has to cook. She looked puzzled by his strange remark, leading Kotaro to explain that things are much easier nowadays. He took out 2 seasoning packets from the fridge and told her to put the ingredients into a bowl, and then added hot water. When she followed his instructions, Haim was surprised when they ended up with a delicious miso soup. Kotaro looked at her proudly, and Hime commented that it was just like instant cup soup, praising that the taste was just like the real thing. When they finished eating, Kotaro was surprised by the flavor of Haim's rice balls. After breakfast, he told her he was going out, warning her not to leave the house for any reason while he went to buy food. Kotaro felt worried about Haim when a friend invited him for a drink. He refused, thinking about how he had bought so many things for both of them. This sudden change in his own actions confused him, as he had never planned on marrying her. When he returned home, his thoughts were interrupted when he saw Haim sitting outside with an old woman. Panicked, he rushed over and scolded Haim for leaving the house. However, she cheerfully explained that the old woman brought him dango because she remembered he liked red bean. He started to pull her inside, but stopped when the old woman mentioned his plans to marry Haim. Haim, delighted by this, laughed and said she was practicing to become a good wife. Before Kotaro could reply, the old woman mentioned her own granddaughter, and Jaime giggled at that. When the conversation turned to the candy store, Kotaro couldn't hold back anymore and asked the old woman if she wasn't curious about Haim's wings. The old woman just brushed it off, thinking it was just some trend among young people, which made Kotaro feel relieved, since she thought Haim was just cosplaying. He was grateful for the old woman's poor eyesight, as it kept her from realizing Haim's wings were real. As Haim's wings were on display, Kotaro breathed a sigh of relief, but the feeling didn't last long. He saw a delivery man staring at Haim's wings in astonishment. Kotaro quickly pushed Haim inside to avoid trouble, apologizing to the delivery man and saying they were filming for their website. Once things calmed down and the old woman had left, Kotaro stormed into the room furious and berated Haim for going outside. Jaime explained that the old woman wanted to give him dango, and she thought it would be fine if people saw her, since she was used to seeing people on Mount Takao. However, Kotaro argued back, saying that this place was different from the mountains. Haim still doesn't fully understand human society, and Kotaro was worried that if someone took a picture of her, it would cause trouble for her village. Haim tried to apologize, but Kotaro cut her off, suggesting she should go back to the mountains. He regretted bringing her here, but Haim held onto him tightly, saying she didn't want to go back. Kotaro pushed her away, insisting that she hadn't listened to his warnings. Confused about the future, he felt she was a burden and urged her to return home. Haim silently apologized and quietly went to her room. As the day went on, Kotaro grew more worried about her, since she hadn't eaten or drunk anything. Just as he was about to go check on her, the door to her room opened, and Hime stepped out with her cheeks stained with tears. She gently asked if she could sleep with him one more time before she went home. Kotaro couldn't refuse and agreed. That night, as Kotaro lay in bed, he thought about their earlier conversation. He had placed their futons far apart, but he was still worried Hime would feel uncomfortable. However, she comforted him, saying it was fine as long as they were in the same room. She broke the silence by asking if he was still awake, then quickly apologized for her selfish request. Haim confessed that she felt like a burden, regretting that she had been so focused on herself without thinking about what Kotaro was going through. Although she admitted she was wrong, she still treasured her time with him, promising to remember these short days fondly. Ever since coming to this world, she had been fascinated by everything around her and realized that everything was even more special with Kotaro by her side. Jaime thanked Kotaro for showing her this world and hoped he would take care of himself when she was gone. As she drifted off to sleep, Kotaro looked at her back, lost in thought about how long it had been since he had shared his life so closely with someone. The next morning, Haim woke up and found Kotaro already busy in the kitchen. She was surprised to see him cooking, hesitantly asking if he needed any help. Kotaro explained that cooking was natural for him since he lived alone. It was just that he hadn't been in the mood to do it lately. As they ate together, Kotaro apologized for yelling at her the day before. He admitted that while it was good for her to stay, it could also bring her danger, even though he was the one who had invited her here. Haim quickly reassured him that he was a good person, always looking out for her and everyone else. She realized that her actions had been selfish and had only made things more complicated for him. Kotaro admitted he had lied when he said she was a burden. The truth is, I really like having you around, since he had never imagined himself living with another person. I'm really happy when you're here, and it made me think that maybe you could just keep living with me. But just as Haim was about to speak, Kotaro cut her off, telling her to forget about the marriage and the village's rules. Because right now, I just want you to live the life you want, and I'll help you in any way I can. He had been thinking about how she could live here safely. He promised to cook for her every day and to take her out exploring when he could. Kotaro accepted responsibility for the current situation and acknowledged that it might be hard for her to trust him. Because I've hurt you before. If you want to stay and experience this life, you can do so without any obligation to me. He asked her if that would be too difficult, while also warning her that the house wasn't perfect and she would have to endure harsh weather. Suddenly, he panicked when Hime burst into tears, hurriedly apologizing for making her cry. Haim admitted she had been selfish and asked if she could really stay. Hime expressed how much she loved the house and wanted to stay with Kotaro. He confirmed that she could stay, but she had to follow his instructions until he found a way to solve their problem. With everything settled, Haim went back to eating her meal with a smile on her face. Kotaro teased that there were plenty of good men around, and she could leave any time if she found someone she loved. Haim blushed, saying he was the first person to ever mention something like that, but refused to reveal what she was about to say. She added that she would wait for him to regain his memories. When Kotaro asked her to explain further, she got flustered, and he awkwardly said he would repeat whatever she wanted, even though he still didn't quite understand what it meant.